All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We have a fun one on deck today. We don't lose sight that we're two guys a lot of times talking about things that are from a guy's vantage point, right?
We have penises.
This is accurate. And so, so, I tried.
Dude.
I
don't know
tried.
why I said
I
that.
tried.
I
All
don't
right.
know why
I'm so sorry from the top on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Damn.
I'll cut that off.
I thought I could work through it. Oh
You
man.
played it off well.
I tried.
Yeah, this is true.
Alright. Alright guys, welcome back to the show. We have a fun one on deck today, man. We don't lose sight that we're two guys who are talking a lot of times from a vantage point of two guys, right? And we thought today would be a cool topic to talk about masculinity, and more specifically now, redefining what masculinity is. And there's a cool quote that we saw about it, and it says, masculinity itself is not toxic, but a man becomes toxic when he allows his humanity to be defined only by masculinity. So I want to ask you from the rip, man.
Yeah.
To me, masculinity, this topic can go a lot of different directions, right?
Totally.
So if I'm to say to you, and to say the word masculinity, what do you think most people, and when I say most people here, I want to kind of specify females, okay? Because I want to maybe try to talk about it from their vantage point a little bit. If we were to say masculinity, what do you think most people, females, would associate with that word?
So I'm gonna come out with a different angle. It's gonna be some good qualities and some not so good qualities.
Okay.
So good qualities, I may say strength,
Mm-hmm.
courage, could be independent, but then we go into bad communicator,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right?
Right.
Does not talk about their feelings or show their emotions, and biggest insecurity is they cannot show they're weak.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for
Would
sure.
you agree?
For sure. Yeah.
What would you say if again?
Now, what would I say? What would I say as like a guy,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Before we get into kind of maybe the female perspective of it, all those things I think are 100% accurate. And more so, not what masculinity is, but what it's not. And kind of how you said, like, can't show weakness, can't show emotion. You have to stand up no matter what through any adversity. Like that, all that stuff. It's like a burden that gets put on you, right? If you're defined in that role as a man, a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, man, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
And I know in our conversations you think so too. It's nonsense. And now, so when I was thinking about this, I'm like, all right, well, what's like the actual definition of the word, right? So I want to see like what does not only society but the dictionary define as masculinity. And it says having qualities or an appearance traditionally associated with men or boys.
That's a terrible definition.
And I was like, what? What threw me off there too was traditionally.
Yeah.
They use the word traditionally.
Yeah. I mean, right away, your mind goes to, okay, so you're basically saying if they fall down and scrape their knee, you're going to tell them to get up, stop crying. That's traditional. That's how we're brought up.
Rub some dirt on it.
Right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
and especially now in a time where so much has evolved.
Yeah.
And so much change has happened.
Especially with the focus on mental health.
Absolutely. And to fall back on traditions, and I'm using air quotes there for the people listening on audio, traditions, what the hell does that even mean? You know what I mean? Like that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So I think if you're looking at it from a female's perspective, the qualities you mentioned maybe come up, right? If you're saying masculine.
Yeah.
Does a female want a partner or a spouse, generally speaking, who's masculine? Is that a quality that they're searching for in a partner?
I mean, I think they may want that strength, especially under certain circumstances where maybe theirs might be wavering and they need to lean on that. But you want someone, I would imagine, you want your spouse or significant other to feel confident in their skin to communicate when they're not having a good day.
Right.
Or someone's really weighing on them. Or, man, they are super sad
Mm-hmm.
and they just need to talk about it.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens.
Yeah.
That's not what happens.
It's not. And what I think too is with the word masculine now, to me when I hear it, like it has negative undertones.
Yeah.
To me when if someone was to call me masculine, I'd be like, man, like you really have no idea who the fuck I am.
Yeah.
Like and I wouldn't take it as an insult.
Right.
But I also wouldn't take it as something of a badge of honor.
Yeah.
It doesn't, okay, what makes me masculine? You know what I mean? So I think there's a stereotype of that word now, and we oftentimes, I think, fall back to the traditions of the word, and it's that to me that's just nonsense. That's just absolute nonsense.
And you know what's crazy too is things happen just by happenstance before we will choose a topic for a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So this past Saturday, so this is airing, after Christmas. So this was on the 16th of December. My wife and I were out in Hartford celebrating my birthday. And we had gone to Urban Lodge, new location in Hartford, or one of their new locations, are a great place. Then we went to Vaughn's, which is an Irish pub. And so we walked in there and there was a couple behind us. And she took it upon herself to it was crowded, to help us find a table. And now she was not sober, I'll say that, but she seemed nice enough.
Yeah.
And so she went all the way down, at the end of the restaurant / pub, and she waved us over and found a table. So we go over and she's like, "Is this good?" And we're like, "Yeah, this is great, thank you." So Val and I, it's about 20 minutes later, are having a great conversation, having a great time. She comes back. And at this point, she kind of like, "Oh, do you have kids or something?" I'm like, "Yeah, we have a 4-year-old and 2-year-old." And she does not have kids. And she was probably in her mid-60s. And all of a sudden, she starts just going in on me to where it's like, "You need to show her she's appreciated," talking about my wife. "You need to buy her diamond earrings. You need to fill her stocking up with makeup. If it doesn't have G for Gucci or something like that, you need to get more of it, for everything that she does." So she was basically stereotyping me that I was a Homer Simpson, where I am an absentee father.
Yeah.
I make my wife do everything around the house, take after the kids.
Yeah.
I just work, and that's my contribution to the family.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had 2 choices during that moment. I either interrupt her and say, "You have no idea who I am, and that is not who I am at all."
Mm-hmm.
Or, now that could have gone south because, like I said, she was not sober.
Definitely would have gone south. Yep.
And B, I had control of my emotions. I was not heated or mad. I just let her go because, again, it was my birthday celebration. So I just let her go.
Yeah.
And finally she left. When she left, without skipping a beat, Val goes, "I hope you know that is not how I think you are at all."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, thank you.
Right.
I'm pretty comfortable, and I know that I'm not
Right.
that either."
Yeah. Yeah.
And as soon as I looked at her, I'm like, "Val, you don't like makeup or diamond
Yeah.
earrings?" She's like, "No, I don't."
Yeah.
So it was interesting how this topic came up for a podcast
Right,
episode
right,
because it's like that there was a stereotype.
And you know what's interesting too, man? And I'm thinking about it now while you're saying it. So the stereotype we're talking about is masculine, right?
Right.
That word, there's a stereotype behind it, and she was classifying you under a certain stereotype.
Yeah.
She was also classifying Val under a stereotype.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Cool.
You should have makeup on. You should have earrings in. You should have all these fancy clothes on. You know, and all these different things. Where I think it kind of fits in this topic of the word masculine and what we view on it, because we have to remove ourselves from the roles that belong in a household. There are no roles in a household anymore. It's 2020, gonna be 2024. It's 2023 now, people.
Yeah.
Like, there are no roles in a household.
Yeah.
Women and men share roles now, okay?
100%.
And to anyone out there who views this as some feminist or feminism agenda here, fuck off. That's not what this is.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, turn it off.
Yeah.
But there's no roles here.
Right.
Okay, so she's stereotyping both of you at that point.
Yeah.
Which is
she's basically
mind-blowing.
she's basically saying, you do all the work, you make him shower you with all the riches in the land.
Right. Exactly.
And it's like, we have a great marriage to where at times it's not even equal.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm doing more, it happens to be that she may be doing more, that's okay.
Yeah.
If I'm having a tough day and all I have is, I forget who said this. Oh man, why can't I think of her name? It's not Dr. Caroline Leaf. But basically she was saying a marriage is never going to be 50-50. She goes, so me and my husband will say, hey, how much do you got today after work? And he may say, I got 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And she may say, okay, I'm a solid 80.
Mm-hmm.
And that addition will be 100%.
Exactly.
But she goes, if say I have 15% and he's at 10, we have to do our best to basically work through it.
Exactly.
And not take it out on each other.
Exactly.
Just work through what we have, you know, because they have kids.
Yeah. And
then you'll get through it.
Yeah, for sure. And that same concept, it doesn't have to be, you know, we're talking about masculinity and I guess in some case stereotyping women as well. It could be a man and a man. It could be a female and a female, or a male and a female, right? Like there's no roles anywhere. Yeah. And but again, all of that falls back again on that word traditionally. Yeah. And I think we're so paralyzed by that word, and we rely on it so much in a lot of what we do, and a lot of the things and the rules we follow, so to speak, in society, that we don't realize the shortcomings that word has. Yeah. And that's why with the word masculinity, I feel like I view it as the way I view it. I just feel like there's shortcomings to that word now, and I don't see it as a positive light. So what are some of the downfalls now to having traditional stereotypes of a word like masculinity?
I mean, first and foremost, men typically have surface level conversations. Yes. You know, they're not going to dive deep and just basically say, "Hey, John, how you doing today?" Mm-hmm. Right. I'm fine. Yep. You know, that's it. Yeah. No, this is what really is going on. Yeah. You tell them. Now, you have to tell the right person, because that person you may be opening up to may say, "Wow, that sucks," and shut you down. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. So right. I mean, but again, that goes back to the fear of looking weak. Yes. That is men's biggest insecurities, right? Yeah. Now, the problem, I shouldn't say the problem, but what happens is when we have boys, we tend to carry on that tradition, using air quotes again, of how a boy should be raised, similar to like how we were, where again, you have a 4-year-old or 5-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy that fall at the same time. You may coddle the girl, but the boy, you tell him to get up, don't cry. We're, again, unknowingly at times, I think we're carrying on that tradition, trying to have them look tough. But what happens is when you're doing that, when you're telling them to suck it up or anything like that, you're making them begin to internalize all of their feelings and emotions. No doubt. Yep. And what's happening is they could start to resort to violence because they're using it as an outlet to get some of their feelings or processing their emotions. Or they could go and turn to alcohol because they're just trying to numb whatever feeling or emotion they have in that moment. Yep. And it turns into a spiral. I mean, a good example of this is when we go and talk to Cybulski, how many of those inmates are in there because of they either didn't have a good upbringing, they couldn't process their emotions, they couldn't talk about their feelings, and in the fear of perhaps looking weak, they had to shoot somebody else. And then they are incarcerated for that,
Exactly.
for that stereotype.
Yep.
When if they could find a role model, a male figure that is comfortable in their own skin,
Mm-hmm.
that can talk about what's on their mind without fear of judgment,
Yeah.
I guarantee you they wouldn't be in there.
For sure. And you know what's crazy about that? Is people will go to that extent to protect the stereotype
And their image.
and their image of being masculine.
Yeah.
They protect it. What are you protecting? You're only hurting yourself at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I'd love to know from someone's perspective, what are you gaining from that word, right? Is it an ego? It's got to be an ego thing, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
It's bravado, ego thing, tough guy, everyone wants to be the toughest and all that, right? But in all reality, those guys now, they are the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And they are more in tune with who they are mentally and spiritually than they've ever been before. And they all say they wish they had that when they made the decisions they made back then.
Yeah.
Right?
And you know, I'll say too, is like I am not perfect.
Of course not.
Because it takes practice. Dude, literally 2 weeks ago, you know about this.
Yeah.
I was dealing with some sort of stomach pain and like my breathing was a little labored.
Yeah.
For about a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not tell my wife. The reason why I did not tell my wife is because not only was it a fear of looking weak, I don't know if it was more so that I didn't want her to worry about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that was why I didn't tell her, but eventually I became so so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That I told her.
Yeah.
As soon as I told her, she worried.
Yeah.
But there's still, and I'm working through this as well, there is definitely a sense that you have to be that rock for your family.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I think if you maybe can be a tree, that may be a little better.
Yeah.
Because with a tree, the wind may take you different directions. A tree's still going to be standing there.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes a tree may need to be watered,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with the tree.
No, you're fine. I understand what you're saying.
But I was trying to figure it out.
No,
but I
you're
just
good,
kept going.
you're good.
Okay.
But I think what's interesting about that too is you didn't want Val to be worried about you.
Right.
You didn't want to be perceived as weak, right? Which I think, if we're talking again in a stereotypical way about the man in the family, I think there is more strength to be gained showing it emotionally and spiritually than there is to be shown physically.
I would agree with that.
Like if I could show my girls, and I'll take this example, right? We just went through the loss of a family member. My girls saw me in a very vulnerable, weak, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
state, very emotional. They had a definite negative reaction to it as far as it made them upset as well.
Because they're not used to seeing.
They're not used to seeing that.
Yeah.
Okay. From really mommy or daddy, like they're just not. Like
Yeah.
we're good about showing it, but it does. Luckily for us, we don't have to a lot. Okay, we have a very good life, and but I look at that and I go, they're gonna someday, maybe not right now, but someday they're gonna look back on that moment because they're gonna remember that. They're old enough now.
Yeah.
That was their first encounter with something really difficult, like death.
Mm-hmm.
They saw that it affected mom and dad to the point where they were not the mom and dad blanketed in armor, right?
Right.
We had emotions and we showed them.
Yeah.
And we worked through them and we talk about it in a positive light now. I hope that they see strength in that when they're able to understand and reflect on that more, right? And for those of you listening, I hope you find strength and can see strength in that.
Yeah.
More so than they'll ever see me when I'm in the gym.
Did they bring that back up to you after the fact, like a couple days later, or did they bring
About
it up?
us being upset?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about it. Like
Yeah.
we were very open about the whole process. And so when we talked about it, and a lot of times it's are you gonna cry? Like they'd just blanket statement ask me that question,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
they because they knew that topic would associated that or cause that emotion in me. And we tell them, like, hey, it's okay to do that. It's okay to cry. It's okay to show emotion when you're sad. That's fine. If you're doing it in the right way, it's totally okay. And to me, that's strength.
Yeah.
Like, no question about it. I'd rather have that kind of strength than any
it's
kind of
bravery too. You know what I mean?
Again, right? And so that could fit into the bravery and all that. Like, that fits that mold of masculinity, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's on a different spectrum. It's
Yeah.
on the emotional, spiritual spectrum rather than the physical spectrum.
Yeah.
Which I think we kind of get lost
That's a
in.
good way of
right?
looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you often think about the physical aspect, like the man has. If a masculine man has to be strong, has to be muscular,
Yeah.
all that stuff, have that outward appearance. But yet at the same time, a true masculine man should be comfortable talking about showing their emotions.
Right, exactly.
Nothing wrong with that.
And you have two boys, and I know you and Val do a good job at communicating with them.
Yeah.
And having them communicate with you. And you're obviously much more in tune with that now than you maybe were 5 years ago, right?
Totally.
But it's a perfect time for you to pass that on to the boys. Like,
Yeah.
you're instilling that in the boys right now, which is awesome. So, and I think one more thing about kind of the downfalls of it all is, man, we conform. Like, we see how the other masculine men or masculine people around us are acting and conform to those behaviors to fit that mold.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting? We had a and I'll keep it disclosed for the most part, but we had someone we were working with, and she had made mention of her significant other having this toxic masculinity, and it came from the environment he works in.
Yeah.
And she mentioned it one day to us when we were together, and mentioned the kind of some of the topics we've been talking about, and she really wanted her husband to listen to it because we kind of do a good job of showing more of an emotional, spiritual side of things rather than such like a bravado, masculine side of things. And she was appreciative of that, which is really cool to hear. But also, she identified right away that, like, he's getting this toxic masculinity from the environment he's in. He's conforming to his environment, and it just was something about that she just did not like at all. And it was interesting to hear that.
And I would say this, to that point, I would believe that environment can almost calcify you from talking about your emotions, right? Like, you don't even bring it up anymore. Like, you talk about sports, or if it's your working environment, all you do is talk about work, right?
Yeah.
But we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
We all go through ups and downs in life.
Right.
I remember Tony Robbins, the GOAT,
would
would always say, the reason we communicate is to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
When we communicate something bad or when we're sad, it's to feel better.
Right.
When we talk about something good, it's because we feel great and we don't want to talk about it more.
Right.
In this essence, because we're talking about masculinity,
Sure.
every man has to get comfortable talking about their feelings.
Yeah.
It's going to be uncomfortable at first.
Sure is.
But when you start to dive into your feelings, your emotions, and I don't think a lot of men actually understand their feelings and their emotions.
Why would you say that?
Because if you ask someone, hey, how you doing? And they may say, I'm stressed. Well, what are you stressed about?
Mm-hmm.
Work. What about work? It's like you're unpacking and peeling back these layers. And it may find out it may have nothing to do with work.
Exactly.
It could be, maybe work's a little part of it, but you don't have an outlet. Maybe you feel guilty about your responsibilities as a parent. All of this stuff that's weighing on you, but you're saying stress when the reality is maybe you just don't feel loved.
Yeah, right.
But yet you're classifying it as stress.
Yeah, you're right. That's an excellent point, right? Because you don't know until you do it how to unpack it.
Yeah.
But you have to do it over and over and over again.
It took me a very long time through journaling to really understand my emotions and my feelings.
Yeah.
Because at first I didn't understand it.
And now with journaling, because we're on the topic of it now, do you feel like you have the need to express verbally your emotions less because you're able to journal and explore them and understand them better through your journaling?
That's a great question. So I personally felt like my communication needed to improve with my wife. And I made it anything that I wrote that would almost like open up my heart, whether it made me cry or just what I wrote down was so like, holy shit, I can't believe I would read it to Beth. No matter how hard it was to read, I made myself read it to her because I knew with me reading it to her, I started, because it's uncomfortable, I started to get comfortable reading it to her, which allowed me to show her my emotions.
Yeah, right.
Which allowed her to really see me, who I was, and what was bothering me, what was inside me.
Right.
She would hug me, you know, and sometimes when I would write stuff that I just really loved, I would come home and be like, hey, can I read you what I wrote?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and she would ask me, like, hey, did you journal? And I journaled every freaking day.
After the gym, right?
That's usually after the gym, yep. Have a stack. And
yes, sir.
I got to a point where I was just so comfortable.
Yeah.
And it was funny too because she started journaling too. And it really helped me understand my emotions because I 100% believe that men just have literally no idea how to classify their emotions.
Yeah, right. It's totally true.
Now, have you gotten better with your emotions?
To do 100%, and it's through a lot of times like writing stuff down or intentionally working through ideas or thoughts through meditation and stuff like that. And I found that before I was practicing those things regularly, I would still be withholding emotions and stuff verbally a lot of times and not communicating the best.
Same here.
So I broke through in a sense that way where I verbalized a handful of times the way I was feeling and things like that, and had really good conversations with Danny and even with like you and Josh and stuff like that, kind of just opening up a little bit more. And but now I feel like my practices and my maintenance, as we call it, is really dialed in. And I'm in a place now where I feel like I have full understanding of exactly what I'm feeling at all times, and I know how to handle it when it happens. It doesn't mean I don't get mad, or it doesn't mean I don't get upset about stuff that still happens. I know how to not let it domino effect and destroy my day, though.
Yeah, that's huge.
And that's where I think what we're talking about with the masculinity things, when you're withholding a lot of it and you don't know how to express it any verbally or through journaling and stuff.
Yeah,
you're going to kind of fall into that toxic pattern, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about toxic masculinity.
Yeah, go into that. What exactly is toxic masculinity?
So I think a lot of times now, well, we kind of touched on it with kind of who we were talking about before and her viewpoint with her significant other. And
right.
But I wanted to kind of paint a different picture with it to kind of maybe get a clear image for us, right?
Okay.
So in 2019, the American Psychological Association released guidelines for psychological practice with the boys and men, which states that psychologists strive to reduce the high rates of problems boys and men face and act out in their lives, such as aggression, violence, substance abuse, and suicide. So those things right there are the children, if you will, of toxic masculinity, of the withholding, right? Of the anger issues, of the hidden anxiety, right? All of those things that men who have this I can't show emotion side of things, which is a lot of times a toxic masculinity thing. That's what you get from it.
Yeah.
Congratulations, this is your prize.
Yeah.
Right? And when you, like we talked about, work through a lot of those things, all of these issues that they're talking about, like the aggression and the violence, and I talked about with the kids, right? Like you develop those things when you're younger. Alcohol abuse, you touched on that already. Suicide, the rates of suicide in men, and how high they are when, we have I think, better understanding of the emotional communication side of things, what that impact has on the suicide rate.
Yeah.
If someone had someone to talk to and were talking to the appropriate people,
Yeah.
how much different would that rate be?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's something that I think really paints the picture for what toxic masculinity will provide you if you stay on that track.
Yeah. No doubt. I mean, Val teaches at a middle school, and typically when there's bad behavior from a male, from a boy, I'll always ask her, what's their home life like? 9 times out of 10, it's either a divorce, they're living with their grandparents, it's not a good home life.
Yeah.
And it's a cry for help.
Yep.
Because their anger and their behavior is a reflection of not having love, not feeling like they're enough. It's from their home life.
Yeah.
And it's a cry for help.
It
And
is.
but this is the thing, is they don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And that's the scary thing.
Yeah.
And it's going to lead to all those points that you talked about. I've talked about this numerous times on this podcast of when our soccer captain took his life my freshman year, his senior year.
And what do you always say?
That to me says he did not have anybody to talk to.
And you'd rather have a brother cry on your shoulder
Yep.
than do something like
Than
that.
take his own life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the word toxic in that, right? What do we always kind of say about maybe if you're hanging around the wrong crowd or something like that, right? Those people are toxic, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're in a toxic environment.
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're in a family that, like you're kind of explaining, you're in a toxic family, toxic environment. That's what that is.
Yeah.
It's learned
exactly
behaviors.
Yeah.
You're learning the behaviors of the people around you, letting them mold and shape who you are and what you can express.
Yeah.
And I think now when we see things either on socials or through podcasts or books, whatever it may be, that people a lot of times who I may hear sometimes who are too far on the spectrum of that toxic masculinity, I can't identify with that.
Yeah.
And I hear it and I'm like, I can't get into it. I can't jive with it. I feel the underlying tones in what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I just don't have that belief system. You can, and that's totally fine. If that's what you believe in, who am I to tell you what to believe in? But I can't jive with that.
But we also are very selective too with who we follow and emulate, because
sure.
It's like, all right, we are driven, we have goals, we are going to reach a certain platform or reach whatever.
Yeah.
The people that we're following all kind of have the same thought process and view on masculinity.
Yeah.
Right? So let me ask you this. What do you think masculinity should be?
Complete and utter comfort in who you are. Like I think the most attractive trait an individual can have, and I don't mean like attractive like sexually attractive. I'm saying attractive like other people want to be around you, like a magnet.
Yeah.
Is having comfort in who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have that ability to kind of exude the confidence in yourself in a way that shows comfort and not arrogance, you're going to attract the people you want in your life, which is going to encourage higher levels of communication in the people around you.
Yeah.
So I firmly believe that, masculinity has to have, right now, if you ask someone, what's the percentages of masculinity, physical to emotional? What's the percentage? People will probably say what? 80-20, 70-30, maybe, right?
I'd say 80-20.
Right?
Yeah.
That's not right.
No.
That's the opposite to me. You know what I mean? Like, just because someone may be slight of frame, if you will, it doesn't mean that they're any less masculine and are able to handle high stress situations.
Yeah.
If their practices and their maintenance is where it should be and they take care of themselves and, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all that stuff, then you can fall under any category that there is. But that's kind of how I view it. Like if you're strong enough to be a support in your immediate friends and family group, that's where it should be for me.
So I was actually going to ask you, so you kind of touched on it there.
Yeah.
With that kind of definition of masculinity, do you feel when a man is exhibiting those qualities that they are able to pick up on another man when they are not exhibiting those qualities and kind of maybe can ask, some questions, like, hey, are you okay, man? Like, what's going on? Start to ask those like intuitive questions.
I'm a big hip hop fan. Okay.
Yes.
Love Jay-Z. Love Jay-Z for a long time. One of my favorite lines Jay-Z has is, "You can't sell me bullshit. I know the prices." Yeah. And that's what I would say to that question is, for someone who's in tune with themselves, like I can say you and I are.
Yeah.
We can spot that in other people.
Yeah.
Where it's like, nice outer shell, bro.
Yeah.
Like, we see what's going on. You know what I mean? It's because it's apparent to me. Like, I can see that. Like, okay, you're withholding a lot here. This act you're putting on isn't fooling us. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, especially if they're talking, if their topics are typically around work or sports. You know, oh, I'm building this around the house, and it's kind of like, okay, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
How is your life?
Right.
Like, how are you?
Yeah.
Like a simple question of just how are you can really take you down a rabbit hole, especially if the answer we always talk about is fine, or I'm doing good. You can tell by their body language whether they're good or not.
Yeah.
Now it's up to you, or it's up to them if they really want to open up. You can follow up and be like, no, I mean, that's kind of a shitty answer.
Yeah.
How are you really? I could tell something's off. What's going on?
Right.
And then just by caring and following up with the question, you typically can get that person to open up. And all you need to do is listen.
And do you think sometimes maybe if you show yourself as someone who can be more vulnerable,
oh fuck yeah,
that's gonna open the door for them?
Because it's showing that this is a safe place that is judgment free.
1000%.
I find it when you can kind of lead, and you can kind of say, hey, this is a safe environment here, and kind of talk about maybe what you're going through. And now again, it doesn't have to be something like so vulnerable that you're like, holy fuck, this dude, I just met this dude and he's already opening up about this.
Right.
Maybe put a little bit like, hey, I had a rough day, and you kind of can go into a little bit this way.
Yep.
It kind of it's showing others, specifically men, that it's okay to talk about what's on your mind.
And I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Not only because I know you well, but because I experienced that with you. And mentioned a few times before, that first night that we all connected, you, me, and Josh specifically, in that one night last August. So I showed up with the thoughts of it was going to be kind of like a bro fest, where we were just going to kind of have surface level conversations, be three dudes just duding,
Yeah.
And it started off at a very surface level kind of temperature, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And about 5 minutes in, you changed the tone of the conversation, and you started asking probing questions to both Josh and I. And then there we were 3 hours later, almost damn near midnight, going in deep on these conversations.
Yeah.
And that night, my life changed.
Wasn't it freeing almost?
1000%.
Yeah.
So, but that took you asking those probing questions. That took you opening the door, talking about things that were personal to you, for me to say, this is what this is about.
Yeah.
This is what it could be. Because I think these things, I don't say them.
Yeah.
And it opened up, kind of like you said, a safe place.
Yeah.
And I'll forever be grateful for you for that. And it was just something that I wish more people would do.
Yeah. It was almost like the spotlight was on you.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, let's open up, see what's inside. What are you really thinking?
And there's a time or place for that stuff too.
100%. You gotta be there.
You can't be in the middle of family dinner and say, "Hey, Debbie, let's get into it." You know?
Exactly. You can kind of understand where a safe place is. You have those friends that
Yeah.
You can talk about. You can talk about things like that.
Yeah.
But there's other friends that, hey, it's gonna be sports.
Yeah.
And alcohol. That's basically all it
is. Yeah, for sure. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or like, well, what the missus did to piss you off or something like that.
Exactly.
We all have that, but that's.
Yeah.
So how would you define it then? Because I definitely want to ask you the same question you asked me. Like, how would you define masculinity, or what would you want it to mean now?
So I 100% agree with how being confident in your own skin and a comfort level of being who you are.
Yeah.
That takes time, that takes practice.
Yeah.
It's really taking time to discover yourself, especially like discovering your emotions and stuff. But men need to stop fearing the appearance of looking weak and just focus on being a good man.
Yeah.
I feel like when you can just focus on being a good man, it almost just a weight is lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah.
A good man just, exhibits qualities of bravery, exhibits respect, stands up for what they believe in a respectful fashion.
Yeah.
Because when you can be a good man, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it this way, I have 2 boys, right? Who do you want your sons to become? I mentioned it before. I think you did too. Role models.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough role models. I don't think enough boys have enough mentors or role models to look up to and be like, yes, I'm just going to follow his path because I know that will be the path to follow.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about this. I hold myself to a high standard because I know 2 boys depend on me to kind of show them the way.
Yeah.
So I have to be respectful of my wife.
Yep.
Please and thank you are huge in our house.
Oh yeah.
But they have to understand how they need to treat people. They have to understand how they can talk about their feelings. But you also have to understand too, you have 2 daughters. Who do you want your daughters to marry?
It reminds me of the thing you sent me maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago where it said, "You're the first man your daughter will ever love, and she's going to compare every man after you to you. So you better make sure your shit's in order."
Exactly. You don't want to show qualities that, okay, all of a sudden your daughter is dating some deadbeat who is getting shit-faced all the time, talking to her just like dog shit.
Yeah.
And you're like, why are you with her?
Yeah.
You got to look in your own home.
Yeah.
Make sure your own home is safe.
Yeah.
Exhibit the qualities that you want your son or your daughter to follow or to find in another person.
Right.
You got to be that role model.
Yeah, for sure. And one other thing that's not on here, and it came to mind, about 10 minutes ago, and I wanted to kind of remember to mention it, is another thing and trait that in the stereotypical world of masculinity, I think is a big downfall, is comparison. Guys often feel the need to compare themselves to the next guy.
Oh, all the time. All the time.
And there's got to be, it's interesting how it's done. It's done in such a dumb guy way too, where the guy who knows something about a specific thing, say it's cars, right? That guy will talk about cars in a way that he knows other people don't know cars to make himself seem superior. And that's a way that they'll put themselves on a pedestal, which then causes comparison issues with the guy who's listening, going, I don't know that much about cars. Am I less of a man? You know what I mean? It causes this mind fuck. And guys do this shit all the time. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's so interesting how you try to have a certain assertive dominance in a way, by your field of knowledge.
Look at when we went to Cybulski reintegration and when we went to Enfield High.
Yeah.
What was the question both males asked us? How much can you bench?
Yep.
Because it's a measuring stick.
It is.
It's basically saying, oh, can you do more than me?
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah, because if we said 1 pound less than them, you know they were telling us that they could do that weight. But if we put 1 pound over them, they would say, "Oh, nice."
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that.
It's deflating to their ego.
Exactly, but then they're comparing themselves. It's all ego based.
It's all ego driven. It's all about puffing out the chest.
Right.
And it's like when you can just stop comparing yourself to others and just focus on you.
Yeah.
Focus on what's important to you.
Yeah.
It should be a good person.
Right.
And making sure that you're emulating the qualities that if you have a family that you want your boys to exhibit, and if you have daughters that you want them to look for in someone if they're going to eventually date when they're 32.
Exactly. Only 32. Exactly. So that, this is again the perspective from two guys, right? But I feel like we have a pretty well-rounded idea on what masculinity was versus what it should be, and we take great pride in putting that thought into our own homes.
Yeah.
You know,
And I'm going to say this too. If there are guys out there that feel like they have no one to talk to, they're struggling, feel free to reach out to John and I. We're more than happy to talk to you, just to listen. But also, if there's younger kids, boys, teenagers that are listening to us, that they have no direction, that they're looking for a mentor or a coach, reach out to us. There's so many kids out there that are lost, that they feel like they have no direction. Reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. But you have to take the first step, and that's reaching out.
For sure. Well said, man. Well said. Well, guys, we hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, like, share, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate you guys spreading the word and listening in. We hope you guys had a great holiday. We hope you guys have a very safe New Year's 2024.
It's going to be a great year.
It's going to be our year.
That's right.
And your year. Let's get it.